it's Shari here today, and I'm going to be making this card with an encouraging sentiment using lots of alphabet stamps. So let's get started. So I've got some narwhal cardstock cut to an A2 size card, and I'm going to be using 3 different alphabet sets. Here's a little sneak peek. I did plan out my words, so I don't usually show you my messy sketches. But I'm going to start by making the background on this narwhal cardstock. I'm going to be using some Yeti ink and the cloud stencil and a blending brush. So I'm just going to figure out where I want to start, and I'm going to start at the top on this one and work my way down. So I'm just going to pick up that ink with that brush. I'm going to tap it off a little bit onto my mat or onto a scrap sheet of paper. You don't need a lot since this is pigment ink, it's going to show up. So just a light hand and just build up the ink as you go. So then when I'm ready, I'll shift it down and I'll move it. I'll turn this stencil so that my clouds are different on every layer that I make. I did decide to start putting a little bit of washi tape so it didn't shift around too much, and that helped it stay in place as I blended that ink up off that stencil onto that dark gray cardstock. So I'm making a stormy sky. And this is going to be kind of the top part of my card. And then after I've got my clouds blended the way I want them, I'm going to take a little bit of white watercolor, get it on my brush, and just flick some white specks around to give it some texture. Once I have all those splatters where I want them, and I've got it as full as I want, I'll just set this aside to dry. Now I'm going to work on the die cut pieces at the bottom. So this is a piece of black licorice cardstock, and then a piece of storm cloud cardstock. So you can see there I've got my words kind of already put on blocks, so I can just use them to figure out my spacing, so I make sure there's enough spacing for the words that I want to use. I've got these two that are going to layer one on top of the other, but because of the way the die is, these two bumps on the right side of the storm cloud cardstock are going to show a little bit, but I don't want them to. I just want this to be on the left side of my card, so I'm just going to cut those off. And you could cut it all the way off, but since this is thick cardstock, I wanted that all the way across the bottom, so I'm just cutting a little notch out. So now the clouds coming down from the left side will just look like they go right behind the black clouds. So the first stamp set I'm using is Violet's ABCs, and I've already got the word dark spelled out on my block. I'm going to be white embossing this onto that storm cloud that I made. And then for the words in between, it's going to say look for. Now I have this small banner, but it's a little longer than I wanted. So I'm just adjusting the length by cutting it again with that same banner die it was cut with. And now I have a shorter banner and it will fit my little words perfectly. I'm using Harold's ABCs for the small words. And I'm using VersaFine ink because that's what I'm going to use when I stamp over the clouds that I stenciled, so I just want all the black to match. Now I'm going to add the word stars in white embossing using Claire's ABCs to the black cloud. So you can see I've already used my embossing tool. I'm just going to lay my little banner there for spacing. I have the word stars spelled out on my block because there's only one capital S in this stamp set. So I'm going to go ahead and put the embossing on that, and then I'll just add that last S separately. And then I will just heat that up with my heat tool and melt that embossing powder. Now when I have dark cardstock like this, I like to go over it with my chamois just to get that extra anti-static powder off. I'm going to add some flecks of gold watercolor to both of these pieces in the different shades of gold, just to look like stars and make it match the flecks that are on the cloudy piece that will be above. Now for the rainbow part of my card, I have some 1/8" strips of glitter cardstock here. So I've got a red, an orange, a yellow, a green, a blue, and a purple, and these all come from the different sets of glitter cardstock. I'm just going to use my grid mat and some liquid glue to line up that first stripe. So this is going to be more of a rainbow stripe than a curved rainbow. And then once I have the first one in place, I can just run my glue tube, a little line of glue right along each one, and put the next strip down. Since these are cut longer than my card, I can easily just trim them off and make sure they're all even at the end. So I'll just trim them off right against the edge of that cardstock. I'm going to glue these two pieces together that are going to be layered one on top of each other, and I just use liquid glue to do this. So I've gone back to my Claire's ABCs and I'm going to work on the word rainbows. So I have a die cut wavy banner and I've picked out all the colors that I want. I'm going to stamp each letter in a different color. I'm starting in the center and I'm going to work my way out to make sure that my word is nice and centered. I've just got my letters already on the block over there so that I don't have to try and search for them on the background, but this was also from when I was trying to plan things out. So this also helped me know the spacing of these letters perfectly. And how cute is that, just stamped in all those different colors. So now for some assembly. I've got some foam tape on the back of those clouds that I glued together earlier, and I'm just going to layer that on the bottom of this panel that I'm creating. So now I'm just going to lay my banners that I've stamped out onto that card base that I'm creating, just for spacing. And I'm using Harold's ABCs again, and I've spelled out when it's on the block. And I'm going to be stamping that in some VersaFine black ink. And this is going to go underneath that rainbows banner and a little bit to the right. I'm using this ink because it's a nice dark black pigment ink, and since I'm stamping over pigment where I did those clouds in the background, I want to make sure that it covers it very well. So now I can use the look for again, which I used on that yellow banner, and luckily this saying has that twice, so I don't have to do that again. But I'm going to stamp that above the rainbows banner and a little bit to the left. So I like how the words kind of flow down this panel that I'm creating here. Now I'm going back to Violet's ABCs. I have the word rains. I'm going to stamp that to the right and right above the look for. And then this will leave a space for the last words that I'm going to do on this little piece of rainforest cardstock. When it, and I'm going to do it in some white embossing powder. And then I'm just going to trim it off so it's like a little tiny banner but without the tails at the end. So before I start putting these banners on, I'm just going to glue this whole panel to a card base using some strong adhesive. And then I've got some foam squares on the back of this wavy banner. And then I'm going to use some thin foam squares on the back of these smaller banners so they don't pop up quite as much. Also because the clouds at the bottom are already popped up on foam tape. So to finish it off, I'm going to add some embellishments. I have some stars that are die cut using the tiny stars that are part of the Stitch Star Frame dies. And these are cut from yellow glitter cardstock to go with my glittery rainbow. And then I also have some raindrops, and these are cut with dies in the Stitched Umbrella die set. And these are cut from the blue glitter. And here is the finished card. I just love the sentiment. When it rains, look for rainbows. When it's dark, look for stars. And I think this is a great encouraging card that anyone would love to get in the mail. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.